this week they announced that the 2034 World Cup is going to be hosted in Saudi Arabia. And for me, this is a huge deal. Obviously, Saudi Arabia is having more and more involvement in pretty much every aspect of sport. But I wanted to get you two's thoughts on a World Cup in Saudi Arabia and maybe where they've been for the last few years and where football's going.
I don't know. Again, I think it's quite disappointing it's hard because was it them and Australia were the two main nations, and then mysteriously Australia withdrew their application, and you kind of think, well, why did they do that? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It just all seems a bit dodgy, but they say that part of the world's in final frontier of football. That's the narrative some people are playing, but it's obvious what's happening, isn't it? It's obvious what's going on. And does it mean another Winter World Cup as well? Maybe, I don't know, but I'd rather have it in a different country, quite frankly. But
yeah, I mean that's the thing. At the end of the day, football, it's for everybody. It is. I mean, fair enough. What was it? It was Qatar, the last one. Mm-hmm. So they're obviously delving into the Middle East. 2034. I don't know. The thing is with Saudi Arabia, as you say, it is quite suspicious. Just that Australia withdrew.
Yeah.
But if it had to be another Winter World Cup, the beauty of World Cup is at the end of the season, summertime, and if you've got to kind of move the entire schedule to the end of the year, then I just don't really think it should be happening because it works at the moment. I mean, that last World Cup, fair enough, it works. It was a good World Cup, but you've got to think about the players as well. Just have the player first part of the season, and then they take a little break, play the World Cup, and they come back and straight back into the action, and you're just seeing more and more injuries. You've got lots of young players that come through and they might be playing every minute of these games, and they might just end up ruining what could have potentially been a long career by picking up injuries, by forcing a World Cup into the heart of winter.
Into a schedule when it shouldn't be there.
It's been forced. It's been forced in, and it should just be how it has been at the end of the footballing season, summertime. Why fix something that's not broken?
I agree with you in a sense of the scheduling as well. Like, I think as football fans, and not only as football fans, but as I imagine it's the same argument going on within clubs and within FIFA, etc. Like, you want to be able to concentrate on your club for the season and think, right, he's coming back from injury here, we're going to need to pick up these points against these players. Whereas with a World Cup thrown in the middle of it, there's going to be a lot of things that change your season that actually have nothing to do with the running of the club. It's to do with the international level of, like, let's say if you're a club who relies on players that aren't going to amazing international teams that are going to be at the World Cup, their levels of like fitness and medical staff and things like that might not be to the same level. So it's going to massively impact your season.
I mean, to counter that, you kind of the African Cup of Nations that's played in January, isn't it?
Literally about to say that.
I mean, Liverpool, we've been stung with that for the last few years with Mane and Salah and stuff. So I suppose there is, kind of get used to it, but I don't know. It's just.
But the World Cup, especially with our league, the vast majority of players you'd expect to be going to the World Cup, or even the lower teams, if they've got big players, then you expect them to go again. So everyone's affected, like you said, with the African Cup of Nations. There's not that many teams that are directly affected from it. Obviously, you guys, your best player going over, it's not ideal.
Yeah,
and as you said, you get
going over in
it.
this January.
It's this January.
Yeah. It just seems unnecessary, doesn't it, for it to happen again, kind of thing? Because it was a great World Cup, but the repercussions of injuries and muscle strains, and you forget these players are playing a lot of games, aren't they?
Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, you've got to think that must have had a massive impact as well on him. I mean, he's going to be out for a substantial amount of time. One of City's best players, if not City's best players.
One of the best players in the whole world.
One of the best midfielders in the world, yeah.
Because didn't he get injured in the Champions League final as well, didn't he? And that's, you just don't want to see. You want to see the best players playing the big games, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's obviously taken a toll, hasn't it? So I just think overall, I just don't think it's a good idea.
It's forced.
And you can see it's happening for certain reasons, and we all kind of know the reasons, don't we? So, but
what can we do?
I think for me, it's a real shame because, like, personally, the fact that within a 20-year space, so within only a set amount of World Cups, we're going to see one in Russia, one in Qatar, and one in Saudi Arabia. It
doesn't look good, that, does it?
It's like literally picking the places. If I could pick where I don't want the World Cup to be for personal reasons, but also I appreciate people saying respect people's culture, whatever. That's cool and fair enough. Like, do your thing, but not when the game I love is going to have to go be played in a country I wouldn't legally allowed to go be myself in. So like for me, it's like a real personal one. And I think the worst thing about it is it's not really been awarded on any kind of footballing merit. Like Qatar especially,
They had to build it from scratch, didn't they?
They had to build everything. Thousands of people died in the building of the stadiums. And it's not, at least at the minute, Saudi Arabia are investing a little bit more in like the infrastructure around football, etc. But even still, we talked about this the other week. Some of the games in Saudi Arabia are getting sub 500 people going.
Did you see that? I think the National League in England had an average attendance throughout the grounds of about 1,000 or about 1,500, and that's the National League. That goes all the way down to like between the 6th and 8th tier of English football. Has an average attendance of more than the top league in Saudi Arabia. So it goes back to, at least you are seeing something that they are trying, and they're getting big players over there. And they're not just building from the ground up like Qatar had to do in terms of building stadiums and stuff like that. There is something there. But if you look at it, compare it to the English National League, it's pretty mental.
It's poor, isn't it?
But my problem with it is there's something that's there, in my opinion, is just a government sports washing scheme.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, that's the thing. It's not like there was an organic interest for football to get bigger in that country. Like in some of the South American countries and stuff, like that Brazil World Cup back in the day. They live and breathe football. Like they live and breathe football. They love it. Or even if it was in a neighbouring country where there probably is that love for football, but they've never had a big team. Saudi Arabia, it doesn't seem like that's a thing, because they've just signed some of the biggest players in the world, and the games are still getting atrocious attendances.
Well, there's money to be made for them, isn't it?
Well, it's money to be made for FIFA as well, which is the thing that...
That's it. Who was the FIFA president? What's his name? I can't remember his name. Ifan Tan or whatever it is. Just someone you just don't want, organising football. I know we had, was it Sepp Blatter before him? I mean, it's just corrupt. It's just so corrupt, and it's so obvious. Like say, is Russia the next one coming up? Is that the next one?
No, Russia was in the past.
Oh, sorry, Russia.
2018.
What are the next ones before?
So to be fair, we've got the USA one. It's like USA,
that's a
Canada,
good one.
and Mexico.
That'll be a good one.
The 2031 split
between
three continents, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's that then? Who was that?
It's Spain, Morocco, and Portugal. So it's two continents.
Oh no, sorry. That I'm sure I was thinking one where there's some played in South America, and I don't know. I might be mistaken, but even still, that's not too bad actually, because Morocco might be classed as a different continent. But when you look at it on the map, they are quite close.
But I think again though, like I appreciate trying to spread the World Cup out actually,
but it should be in one country.
It defeats the object of it. Like when I look at some of my favourite World Cup tournaments, I relate it to the atmosphere in the country, and like I remember the South Africa World Cup because of the vuvuzelas and the
Brazil one was fantastic.
The Brazil one, like
France, Italia 90s, iconic as well.
This is what I mean. Like, what are you going to say for the 2030 World Cup? The Spain, Morocco, and Portugal 2030.
Doesn't roll off the tongue.
Like I know you will just end up saying 2030, but I feel like it's got from a point of FIFA having people's best interests at heart to clearly whatever can make the most money.
Yeah. I think also with these countries, I think there are probably a lot of countries out there can't really afford to host it, so they're coming together with their neighbours, aren't they, to try and lower the cost. I think that plays into it as well, quite frankly, because all these FAs, they've just got no money, have they, and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I think maybe as many countries aren't offering to host it now as well, like, and staying in the running, because there's clearly more monetary value for FIFA from other countries, so they know that there's not much point in them putting the money together and coming up with a government proposal to bid for the World Cup, because they've got practically no chance. But yeah, I found a comment that I thought was particularly interesting when the FIFA president announced that the World Cup was going to be in Saudi Arabia this week. There was a quote that he said, football unites the world like no other sport, and the FIFA World Cup is the perfect showcase for a message of unity and inclusion. And I just thought, what about gay people and women? Yeah. Like, I was just like, well, you can say that, and the message is cool and all. It's a good thing to put on Instagram, but it doesn't really make sense when you give it.
It goes back to what you said about, I understand you've got to respect other people's cultures, but where do you fucking draw the line? Like, at the end of the day, just the values in obviously our own country and countries like this, it's just so different. I mean, as you said, you've got to kind of respect everyone, and there's religious values into it as well. But when it actually comes to some of the stuff that does go on, you just can't really.
Yeah, when you're dying,
with some of the stuff.
Denying someone their basic human rights, you just can't.
It's literally basic human.
Yeah. I mean, any country, if the World Cup was held in England, people in England have got strange views and all that kind of stuff. So you're never going to have an ideal country or culture to host the World Cup.
Perfect.
But when it's, like I say, human rights, when you're denying basic human rights, should anything be there, quite frankly? Do you know what I mean? So.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's a tough one though. And I think, like, I guarantee if we post a clip about this one, we're going to get some mega hate and people from those countries saying, well, maybe you should just respect it. But it's not about respecting it. It's about I hate that argument, man. I
Yeah,
don't want to turn this into
yeah.
a political podcast at any point, but I got to get my view across to a certain extent. Whenever people say, "Oh, you've got to respect other cultures in the way other people do things," if everyone throughout history just respected how other people did things, nothing would change. For things to change, people have got to question it, and you've got to actually, in some ways, force other countries and cultures and just one-to-one people. You've probably all had friends or family in the past who have thought a certain way, and you've had to educate them or just tell them that this isn't how the way things should be. Might get a bit of hostility at first, but then eventually things change. And I think football's no different. And maybe football could be a driving force for things in those countries to change. The problem is the Qatar one, they just changed the rules for like 3 weeks and then went back to exactly how it was before, which for the people living there and for the thousands of people that died building the stadiums under atrocious conditions, won't have actually affected their life in a positive manner at all.
No.
So where do you draw the line? But fun and games.
Happy days.
Yeah.
Never a dull day.
Welcome to the Footy Pod.